have 14 seats in that
Presenter this evening. He has what's called a harrowing mission to predict a tornado's track, arrive before it does, deploy a probe he's designed directly into the twister's path, and then get out of its way. He achieved this landmark success in June 11th, 2004, when he dropped that probe right in the path for a tornado tearing through the Iowa countryside. And he's here to tell us a little bit about what he does chasing tornadoes for science. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcoming Mr. Tim Samaras.
How's everybody tonight? Excellent. Well, I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about the things that I love to do. And I'll bet there's a few people here in this audience tonight that kind of likes the same stuff that I do. How many of you love to go to the window when you hear a thunderstorm rumbling on the outside of your window? You just had to go out there and look, right? I see almost every hand up here in the audience. Awesome. That means we're going to have a good time tonight. Because that's what I do. In fact, I started out doing just that. First and second grade, I used to look out the window and watch these storms. Exactly, what do you do with a tornado when you catch it? Do you take it home and feed it to the dog? What? Well, no, not exactly. We actually now provide measurements. We actually measure these tornadoes as they tear across our heartland. And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight. First, a little bit about the United States. United States, if you're a tornado chaser, the United States is the place to be. What you're looking at here tonight is a map showing the yellow and red and peach-colored tracks of EF3 tornadoes are larger. In other words, tornadoes that probably are stronger than maybe having 140, 150 mile an hour winds, all the way up to the EF5 monster that pushing 250 to 270 miles an hour. And your eyes fall right in the center here, right? Area called Tornado Alley. So if you're a tornado chaser, this is the place to be, is right there. In fact, my field laboratory this season has been especially deadly for tornadoes. As most of you are aware, we've had the super outbreak in late April of 2011, just this past year, where over 336 tornadoes have hit, 146 people killed, and then of course Joplin, Missouri getting hit by a single tornado causing over 160 fatalities. Just one tornado. Unfortunately, those are both records. In fact, what you're seeing here is a satellite loop of the three-day event from April 25th to 28th. We hit Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, all in one tornado. 187 mile track, one tornado. It was on the ground for several hours. Why did the storm create that? What processes in the atmosphere were there to make this storm turn into such a monster? Alabama alone had over 1,000 miles of tornado track. Just one state, 1,000 miles. Damage like this. We were there. We watched the Tuscaloosa tornado tear through the western suburbs of Tuscaloosa. In fact, just before it hit, we actually called it in. We were actually watching it from the outskirts of town. And this tornado, by the way, was moving at 60 miles an hour. Not much time to take cover. Again, that's what drives the curiosity. I want to know why these storms become so powerful. Now, the other real problem here is forecasting tornadoes. How many of you watch the weatherman on your local television affiliate, and he says, oh, we're going to get 6 inches of snow. And then the next day it's sunny and the snow never came. How many of you seen that, right? Well, guess what? Tornado chasers got the same problem. We think we have an idea where tornadoes are going to occur, but then sometimes we're wrong. Because a lot of times we depend on what they call a computer forecast. Now, my mission is actually to place instruments in the path of tornadoes. This instrument here that I designed about 10 years ago kind of looks like one of those orange Chinese hat. Is actually a conical pyramid. It's 30 inches in diameter, 6 inches high. It weighs about 40 pounds. is designed to measure the barometric pressure on the inside of a tornado. And you think to yourself, okay, Tim, I thought you were interested in other things, like how fast the wind is blowing inside of a tornado. What do you care about the barometric pressure on the inside of a tornado, the pressure drop? Because there is a pressure drop in the inside of a tornado. How big that pressure drop is tells me how powerful that tornado is. It's actually easier to measure the barometric pressure drop inside of a tornado with a device like this than trying to collect wind speeds of a tornado. You ever tried to collect a wind speed of a tornado moving at 250 miles an hour filled with sticks and rocks and cows and trucks? Very tough. Not many instruments survive that environment. So one of the mechanisms I use, of course, is to measure their barometric pressure. How many of you have seen the movie Twister? A lot of people have seen Twister. Remember that trash can-like device that they showed? Do you remember the name of it? Anybody? Dorothy. Dorothy! Yes, guess what the name of my instrument is? Hardened in situ tornado pressure recorder. HITPR. That's not a very fun name, is it?
What is it?
But I didn't spend a lot of time with acronyms. I wanted the instrument right. We tested in the wind tunnel. We used a lot of our science and our math skills to make sure that device stays on the ground as the tornado passes overhead. It doesn't get picked up, it stays right on the ground. And I'm going to show you some very dramatic examples of how well this instrument works. And right here on the bottom, you can barely see it. Part of it's got cut off here a little bit. I actually have an instrument. That's instrument. You're going to go out and measure tornadoes. There's a little problem. You got to find one of these. Any guesses on where this tornado is? What state this tornado occurred? Yes. Just yell out. Kansas. I heard Kansas. Any other guesses? Yes.
Iowa?
Idaho? Well, that's they get tornadoes in Idaho. Believe it or not, this is south of Twist-X Mint. Remember, I wasn't very up on acronyms. Well, this acronym took me a couple of days to come up with. Tactical Weather Sampling and Tornadoes and Thunderstorms Experiment. Basically, I run a group of researchers that total 12 researchers, a half dozen vehicles. We take these vehicles and we surround the thunderstorm with these research vehicles and measurements. Because for us to understand where the tornado come from, we also have to understand the environment, that thunderstorm environment of which it originated. So we take measurements of not just the tornado, but the thunderstorm environment that the tornado come from. What we're trying to do is to get a science snapshot of what's going on here. We actually have students from Iowa State University engaged on our project as well. We put them in the field as part of their meteorology class. We challenge them to the tornado forecast. And then we find out at the end of the day who's right. On top of the vehicles, it's got a mobile mesonet system. Basically, it looks like a big moose antler that goes on the top of your car. And we actually drive Chevy Cobalts. We don't drive these big Hummer vehicles, that you may see on television. Just Chevy Cobalts. We basically collect wind speed and direction, pressure, temperature, and humidity. Again, what we want to know is the atmosphere and the surrounding conditions that are creating this monster tornado here. Because that helps our understanding of why some of these monsters become so powerful. There's another instrument that I've designed and built for this year or next year. This instrument weighs about 500 pounds. We're making wind speed measurement at 3 different heights. At basically 2 foot, 4.5 foot, and 6 feet. What we're trying to do is understand a little bit about how quickly the winds accelerate from the ground when a tornado passes over. We know that right on the ground, the tornado wind speed equals 0 because, well, you're at the ground. Nobody really knows how fast the tornado wind speeds accelerate once you go from the ground level, 12 inches, 24 inches, 2 feet, 4 foot, 6 feet, 8 foot. Where is the greatest rate of change? If we understood where the greatest rate of change is, we can take that knowledge and apply it to, hand it off to a structure engineer, you might be able to build a better house. Be able to keep the roof on a little longer. And guess what? If we keep the roof on a little longer, better chance of survival. Now, Pro, what you don't see here in this picture is we're getting chased by a tornado behind us. And this is what they call a rain-wrapped tornado. This tornado was basically buried in rain. We were experiencing about 60 to 70 mile an hour winds, and to the untrained eye, you wouldn't have seen the tornado. Very powerful EF4 tornado that hit near the town of Bowdle, South Dakota. For those of you who don't know where Bowdle, South Dakota is, it's about 30 miles west of Aberdeen in South Dakota. And for whatever reason, storm chasers call certain tornadoes that occur near their towns. In this case, this is the Bowdle tornado, simply because the tornado actually tracked within 2 miles of the small town of Bowdle. In fact, here's the tornado track laid over a Google map. It actually formed in the southwest here. It crossed Highway 12, where a research team was basically here roughly 30 seconds ahead of the tornado, dropped that 400-pound instrument, and then it went on to turn into a monster of a tornado, a very powerful EF4. In fact, I have evidence that this EF4 tornado is probably stronger than an EF4 tornado. It should have been rated EF5, but we settled on retreat. Give you an example. Quarterback throws the ball to the receiver. Receiver misses the ball, ball falls on the ground, receiver falls on the ground. How did he miss that ball? What happens next? He takes and replays it in slow motion. So you can see the receiver move in slow motion. He reaches up, tries to catch that ball. The ball slides off his fingertips only 2 feet or 2 inches above. And you think to yourself, gosh, if he only jumped up a little, 2 or 4 inches higher, he could have got the ball. How we've been able to see that replay is thanks to it's not showing us what we want to see. So if we had the right tool for the right job and had a camera that ran at 10,000 frames per second, then this is what we would see. So now we've slowed down time and actually able to look at the lightning strike as it forms. These pictures were non-existent only 4 years ago until I showed how to do this. Again, this camera runs at 10,000 frames per second. And now for the first time, we're actually able to see the details of a lightning strike very clear. Even everybody in this room can come up with some conclusions on how a lightning strike forms. As an example, it seems like the first charge that reaches the ground gets the return stroke. The return stroke is a big flash that we see. National Geographic photographer Carson Peter was here. There's top of Mountain Baldy. There's the strike there. You can barely see it because it happened so fast. Rocket got launched up there when the E-field was high enough. They picked it off and a lightning strike hit their rocket. Now, for those of you who didn't quite see exactly what happened, I actually caught it in slow motion here. You could see where the rocket fired. It's so bright here because the trailing copper wire was instantly vaporized by the lightning. And believe it or not, the video is still running. And this bolt, the lightning bolt, is still barely there. And what I found fascinating was that compared to what you've seen before, when you see the strike and it quickly dissipated, this dude just keeps right on going. It keeps going and going and going. And then something amazing happens. I promise. It's going to happen. It's coming. Several strikes happen down the same path. You would think with a lightning strike being present there. Oh my God. This tornado grew to over a quarter of a mile wide. This tornado was so large as it moved over the town of Manchester, South Dakota on the north side of this road. It enveloped the town in its entirety. South Dakota, and this tornado is about to go right over the top. Nobody in the house, fortunately. Everybody was taking their tornado precautions seriously on this day. So now if you guys were riding with me, tornadoes moving north, we're driving north, we're trying to get out ahead of
Oh, look at that! Huge plane developing!
which is the far southeast of Colorado. Because then the tornado would pick up the tornado probe and send it to the land of Oz. So what we do, we put this tip on it, and it breaks up the flow. It creates what we call a turbulent wake, and it breaks up this Bernoulli effect. And so they stay on the ground. In fact, as the wind speed increases over the top of my instrument, the wind then begins to actually push the probe into the ground. I use the wind to help hold it on the ground, which is kind of opposite of what you'd think would happen. Yes? What's that? Yes, the probes all stay in place. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Pretty amazing. Yes? That's actually the first time anybody's asked me. The question is, what are my predictions on tornadoes and what has actually happened? What is my ratio of success? Is that the question? Well, that's a really good question. And the answer to that is, when we go out on every 10 tornado chases, out of every 10 of those tornado chases, we'll see 5 tornado days. Out of every 10 tornado days, we'll have maybe 1 tornado intercept with our instrument. Why? Because it's so hard to get an instrument inside of a tornado. Because the tornado may last 10 seconds, then boom, the tornado's gone. The system will create a tornado instantaneously. And that's what's really scary.